became very attractive for many people who were stationed here during the war, and that was especially true of eastern Jefferson County that Lakewood's a part of.
Jefferson County schools had merged into Jefferson County R1 district in the early 50s, and so they were now becoming very well known as an up-and-coming school district doing some very interesting and good things.
You had all these little jurisdictions that were governments in and of themselves providing specific services that in a patchwork essentially created the illusion of a city without having a city.
It's one small step for man.
That was a very moving experience. In fact, that took place the same summer we were incorporated.
There were 4 prior attempts to incorporate eastern Jefferson County before 1969, and they all failed, obviously.
No one was ready for it. In fact, it was highly unpopular. Then, in 1969, everything changed.
Denver was on an aggressive annexation policy and using some rather strong leverage like water and other things to force their way. And Lakewood was not the only community that incorporated at that time. So did several other areas in the Denver area, particularly on the west side, for many of the similar reasons that we did.
There was no limitation about where they could go, and the thought of giving up the school system, I think, was a motivating factor. The second motivating factor was the fact that we had a crime situation going on, called him the garage rapist. The concern of the citizens, they recognized that at any one shift, there was only 1.5 sheriff patrol cars to take care of what's now Lakewood. So those 2 things, I think, were highly motivating factors in making June of '69 a successful election. The Lakewood map was drawn in my basement on a ping pong table with a felt pen.
They drew these lines, and they very carefully drew them around some areas or excluded some areas, primarily because we knew that those areas were going to vote against incorporation. So just leave them out.
The individual who wound up as the first mayor of Wheat Ridge, he called me at home and asked if he could come over, and I said sure. And so he came over and he said, Jim, my mother lives right here at 32nd and Kipling. Would you mind redrawing that boundary so she can be in Wheat Ridge? I said sure. So, we had 60 days by state statute to lead up to the first election. The most important thing, perhaps, that came out of that period of time in that 2 months was the fact that we went to the courts with the name of Jefferson City, and that was the name we were incorporated under, Jefferson City, Colorado. Nobody liked it. In that first election, there were 113 candidates for 13 offices. There was the mayor, 10 members of the council, the city clerk, and the city treasurer. There were 13 of them for mayor, and I happened to be successful. Woke up in August after the successful election, realized that we had a city of 90-some thousand people. We had no employees, we had no ordinances, we had no rolling stock, we had no money, but we did have a few headaches. After the election, everybody, there's a real groundswell of let's change the name. As an advisory issue in November of 1969, the City Council was advised by every precinct to change the name from Jefferson City to Lakewood. We met almost on a nightly basis at different school cafeterias
We were lucky to get Jean Rogers, and I think she was one of the stabilizing factors for the city. She was the only one that had experience in running a city.
She had been the city clerk up at Sterling. She was kind of the catalyst, the glue that you would, that kind of held us together through those late meetings. We made the deal to take over 1580 Arrow. We levied a 1.5% sales tax, which helped us to have some resources. And we also were able to establish franchise fees with the utilities. It gave us some income, some way to get started.
Many of the services provided to the cities were done by special districts. And there still are a very large number of special districts that provide water and sewer and drainage. And when Lakewood incorporated, of course, there was the Lakewood Fire Department, and the Bancroft Fire Department touched part of it. There was a very large metropolitan recreation district, Foothills, created just very near the same time the city was created. So the city immediately didn't have to take on, providing water and sewer and fire and some of those things. And the special districts did it. On the other side of that, though, having all those special districts created a lot of problems. You never quite knew where to lay responsibility for something.
A common thing, you'd be going down an alley and a 10-inch line would turn into a 3/4-inch line because they just hooked it up, and so you had a lot of discontinuity in the services. It extended up the full range through districts.
Some of those problems still exist, although in some cases there have been efforts to consolidate or get them to work together. And in the fire district, particularly, Lakewood and Bancroft did merge and create the Metro Fire District, which is, I think, a very, very efficient and a very good fire district.
I think our first two managers made a tremendous contribution working with the council to put in place not only individuals, but systems and procedures and processes that sustained excellence in the city.
We recognized what we perceived to be an opportunity to create a police department that was truly unique. And one of the things we agreed on was to try to soften the image of police vis-a-vis the citizens.
We were called agents, not police officers. We had our own uniforms, blue blazers, gray slacks, tie, light blue shirt with a emblem on the pocket but no visible badge. And our weapons were concealed underneath our coat.
It wasn't too long before we realized we made a mistake. We'd gone too far. So we went back to the traditional titles and traditional uniform.
There's some practical ideas why you can't wear blazers all the time. I think Pierce Brooks eventually got us away from that.
Pierce understood that in the police profession, there is this paramilitary culture that's part of any police organization. And he kept that, he brought that back in. But he also brought in, I think, a lot of the ideas of what the community wanted in a police department, which was a highly educated, well-disciplined, courteous force, which probably was way ahead of its time in a concept which is now called community policing.
Things that we take for granted now that's happened over the years, such as the park system. The park system, you had a small Lakewood park system. You had a very major Foothills recreation district, and both had that proprietary interest of not wanting to lose their identities. And so they became not really supporters of the concept of merging. But as time went on, they did merge, and now as you drive around, you can see the extensive park system. The Edinburgh Park deal was another tough nut to crack. The Edinburgh family had no desire to part with that land for any reason, so it was many hours of negotiation.
I think obtaining both Ottenbrook and Belmar parks were big time issues that sort of percolated up from the citizenry. The city wanted Ottenbrook and had a plan to get it. It did not want Belmar. It had to kind of be, the city government sort of had to be tugged on to get Belmar. But the citizens actually, by popular vote, passed a bond issue and to pay for it, and an ordinance to absorb it.
I had the pleasure of being the citizen who served to create the plans for that building, and then by the time it opened, I was the mayor who presided at the grand opening of that particular facility. So it was really a heartwarming experience to get to do that and to be so proud of that facility.
I think one of the hardest issues that it dealt with was the development of this whole area where City Hall is right now, the development of the Belmar area. Watching Villa Italia kind of die, that was very hard, and I was very close to that. But now as I walk around Belmar and see the excitement and the whole community enthusiasm around Belmar, I think that was all a good, healthy transition.
Today represents a momentous milestone for Lakewood, for Denver, for Golden, and for Jefferson County.
I think the next transition of Lakewood is going to happen as the West Corridor opens up, because it's going to change housing in some areas of the city. It's going to allow people to get into downtown Denver so much easier and back out. I think it's going to link us with our central city.
I'm happy. I think Lakewood, it's unbelievable how the city has matured and the differences and taken on a leadership role within the metro area, not just a passive role.